are listening to Regeneration Rising, a podcast from Quivira Coalition's new Agrarian program that provides information and inspiration to agrarians beginning their journey in regenerative agriculture. Each episode will explore what it means to work in regenerative agriculture, how people come to choose this as their livelihood, and why it's important to them and our future. We hope this podcast provides a foundation of knowledge for future agrarians and land stewards so they can rise up and focus on a regenerative approach to community, relationships, and the land.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Regeneration Rising. I'm Taylor Muglia, and today my guest is Julie Sullivan. She is the current mentored training specialist here at the new Agrarian program. She is actually the founder of this very program, and she's a rancher in the San Luis Valley of Colorado. Before we jump in, I have a few announcements from here at the Quivira Coalition. We are currently hiring for 3 positions here at our organization. We are hiring for a Carbon Ranch Initiative Director, a Development Director, and then specifically here in our program, we are hiring for a Northern Plains Manager of the apprenticeship program. So if you are interested in either of those, you can find more information at quiviracoalition.org/work-with-us. Another announcement, it's crazy to think about, but we are actually coming into the next hiring season for the new Agrarian program. We've scheduled a couple of what we call NAP 101 calls, which are just a rundown of the program, sort of an explanation of each site, goes in a little more detail, and gives potential applicants the opportunity to ask questions about any of the sites to try to find the best fit for them. So keep an eye out for that. Our first one is scheduled on October 23rd at 5 p.m., and the next one is November 13th at 12 p.m. And those are a little ways out, but just wanted to put it on your radar. If you're interested in applying as an apprentice for this upcoming year, please just follow us on social media. You'll get all the updates on when things start happening. And finally, I just wanted to share some information about another podcast that we have here at Quivira called Down to Earth, the Planet to Plate podcast. It's a hopeful and positive take on regenerative agriculture. It highlights the amazing work that people are doing all over the world: farmers, ranchers, policy people, activists, storytellers, all folks who are showing the way toward a healthy food system. You can find it wherever you get podcasts. And now on to today's episode. We're going to go into a little bit of a different topic today. The new Agrarian program has started a program called the Manager Fellowship. Now, what this is we have found a need in our community for growing skills in business, leadership, communication, those sort of skills that don't necessarily get taught on a ranch all the time, but are required skills to be able to start a business successfully and manage a ranch successfully. And so Julie and some other folks here at the New Agrarian program have been crafting up this program. It is only available for our program alumni. So if you've been an apprentice before, just for this first year. But I wanted to share some more information because we are planning to offer this to the general public in coming years. And it's just such a great way for us to bridge the gap between the new Agrarian program and these larger roles within the ranching community that have so many opportunities. Thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been such a long time coming. I've wanted to interview you for a long time. So welcome to Regeneration Rising.
Thank you.
Maybe let's start off by, if you want to say a little bit about yourself, or if you want to kind of just go into your role at Quivira and specifically in the new Agrarian program.
So my name is Julie Sullivan. I live in South Central Colorado in the San Luis Valley on a cow-calf to finish grass-fed operation with my husband, George Whitten. I've only been ranching for about 23 years. And prior to that, I was an environmental educator and a vegetarian for 25 years and an actor. I had a lot of sort of lives prior to coming to the ranch. And I think that's actually part of what has led to my commitment to beginning agrarians is that I was a beginning agrarian at the age of 44 when I came to the ranch and had a lot of professional experience and life experience, but actually didn't really know anything about what I was suddenly doing every day. And I think that gave me a lot of compassion and desire to really support people who wanted to be the next generation. So that's a little bit about me. And specific to my involvement with Quivira and the new Agrarian program, George and I became members of the Quivira Coalition back in 2005, and we've been members ever since, started going to the conference, started to get to know the people at Quivira pretty well. And in 2008, Courtney White, the then executive director, came to us and asked us if we would be willing to help Quivira create some sort of ranching apprenticeship program. George and I had been taking interns for a period of time on our ranch, and we really loved that educator role with incoming people to this profession. And Quivira had realized that sort of addressing food systems and regenerative ranching from the producer side, that, where was the next generation going to come from? And even the conference attendance was largely people who were middle-aged and older. And so it was a real effort on the part of Quivira to address not only where is the next generation of food producers coming from, but the next generation of leaders in land stewardship and addressing sort of the mix between working in wild landscapes. So we created the program in 2008. Our ranch was the first mentor site in 2009, and we've been a mentor site ever since. And the program started with our ranch, and then the James Ranch Artisanal Dairy came on. And then Gordon Tooley and Margaret Yancey with Tooley's Trees, Nancy Rainey with Rainey Ranch. And eventually it's grown to about 20 ranches. George and I ourselves have had 21 apprentices in that period of time. So I think we just have a real commitment to what it means to be a mentor and what it means to really support the next generation. And currently my role with Quivira is officially I do the mentor training and support for the new Agrarian program, but I also work closely with the entire staff. We're a really tight team, and I'm always sort of figuring out ways that the new Agrarian program can grow and morph in order to continue supporting people as they're moving into what's a pretty challenging profession.
Julie, you and I have been coworkers for quite a few years now, and I just really appreciate the commitment to the whole person, like getting people into agriculture, but supporting them as an entire person. Like, I just really admire how you've gone about that. And I mean, it's crazy to hear from you that the conferences used to be kind of one age and older, because now the conferences are so diverse and have such a wide variety of ages. So I think that speaks to your commitment.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's been really exciting to see that, I don't know, maybe 50% of the people in the audience now are young people. It's just so stimulating.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, in your role, you and the director of this program, Leah Ritchie, you did a series of interviews this year with our new Agrarian program alumni. So, we have over 120, 130 alumni of our program at this point, and I think the goal was just to kind of seek, I guess, where they were, what resources they need, how could we support them after they're finished with this program. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about, for you, what prompted interviews with all of our program alumni and what did you discover from them?
I think there were a couple of things. Well, one, George and I have been fortunate to stay in touch with almost every apprentice we've personally had. And so in the course of the 15 years since the start of the program, we've had the opportunity to sort of watch and be involved with any number of people as they've sort of tried to continue growing into this profession after being involved in the new Agrarian program. And so they would call us with questions about production related issues or financial issues or how to write a grazing lease, or they were having trouble with their boss, or they were having trouble with an employee. And so I feel like for 15 years, we've been pretty engaged in recognizing that post-apprenticeship, people still have a long path and sometimes a pretty complicated path in order to get to the point where they're really ready to manage someone else's operation or start their own business. So we've sort of had a front row seat in that for some time. And then the other thing is that for the last handful of years, as we've had more and more alumni in the program, we've heard from alumni in general that they realize that there are a couple of additional hurdles for them. During the 1 or 2 years that they're with the New Agrarian program, they have a cohort. Even though they may be relatively isolated on their mentor's site, they do have the opportunity to get together on Zoom during supplemental education calls, some in-person events with the other apprentices in their cohort. And they do feel like they're held by a community of peers. And they also have the support of the NAP staff and the larger Quivira community, sort of helping them make connections, find resources. And then they graduate from the program and they kind of feel like they've fallen off a cliff. All of a sudden, all of that support kind of disappears, and they can continue to feel pretty isolated and sometimes really sort of adrift when it comes to figuring out, how do I develop the next level of skills with financial management, business management, leadership? How do I just navigate growing forward in this career so that I don't feel stuck at a ranch hand position if I don't want to be stuck in a ranch hand position? So we'd been hearing this kind of for a handful of years from alumni. And in addition, at the same time, in the last few years, the NAP program has been getting more and more requests from people who own ranches or manage ranches, looking for a manager, looking for someone who's ready to really walk in a managerial role, can handle budgets, can handle personnel issues, employment issues. And so we realized that there was kind of this gap that was growing between the fact that there was a need on the landowner, land manager side for this next generation to really be ready to move into management. But by and large, past apprentices, weren't quite at the skill level to be able to successfully navigate those jobs, that there was this sort of gap in training. So, we've seen this gap emerging over the last few years, and that's really what prompted the program in general and Leah and myself to decide that we wanted to survey some alumni. We didn't actually survey all alumni. We picked sort of a range of people, both people who'd been out of the program for 12 or 14 years, as well as recent alumni, to just get a sense of what are the barriers they're experiencing, what's the kind of training that they would really like to get, but either because of finances or time, they haven't been able to access that training. So we put together a survey and surveyed quite a number of alumni, and actually had some really interesting results that came back to us about what they feel they need in order to move forward to that next step.
I think nonprofit programs can sort of pop up, and the question is like, what was this for? But this seems like this was actually, the program's running fine. It was like we were getting feedback that this was a need from our community, that this was an actual need. And then we sort of built the program around that, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. I think that, I feel like as a program, the New Agrarian program, the core apprenticeship program is strong and is at a really good size. It's not like we felt like we needed to somehow expand, but it was just so clear that there was this really important need for something that was accessible, affordable, that built that sense of connection and community again for people.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, also the fact that the need was also coming from the generation that's starting to age out and really want a young person to come in either as a manager or a junior partner.
And I think that is, I call it the not so new agrarian. Like that's the gap. It's like we're really good at the new agrarian. We're like very connected to experienced agrarians and farmers and ranchers, but the not so new, that middle ground is like, yeah, it's exactly right. That cliff feels very real. Like you're not quite sure if you should just keep being a ranch hand or if you're ready to jump into something. And I have ranchers all the time. Like we love the community within your program, like the values that Quivira carries, and the people coming through the program are awesome. Like, find me a ranch manager. And so I kind of look at my list and see them. I'm like you, kind of in touch with some of the alumni, and it does kind of feel like, well, I'm not sure they're ready for that. Like, we'll put it on the job board and obviously still connect them, but there is this sort of feeling that, yeah, there wasn't the development into those manager roles. Like, if you've been through our program, even if you did 2 years, that's only 2 years on a ranch. Like, you can't possibly be ready for all of the things that are going to hit you in a ranch manager position.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, some learning, I think you just are never going to be able to do until you're sort of thrown into the arena as far as things. But I've known a number of alumni who relatively early in their career were given the opportunity for a pretty significant management job. And they really struggled. And sometimes it ended up not ending on a very good note. And I think that can be incredibly demoralizing to be given an opportunity and not quite being ready for it and having it go poorly. And then you sort of feel like, well, should I just give up? And I think we really want to help people avoid having that experience. And so I think that's sort of the reason why we wanted to create this manager fellowship program.
So yeah, let's jump into a little bit more information about the manager fellowship. So tell us sort of the key components that came from those alumni interviews that are like sort of the themes that folks are going to learn in this program.
So we asked a sort of a series of questions about sort of management skills as well as leadership skills, and pretty much we got some very consistent responses about what felt most important. Number one on the list across the board was business and financial skills. People really want to understand, how do you create a business plan? How do you determine what kind of business structure? Should you do an LLC? Should you do an LLP? Should you do a B Corp? Should you do a sole proprietorship? All of those have really different benefits and they have different funding opportunities. So really understanding what's going to be a good fit, that was a big ask. Financial management, knowing how to do a budget, an enterprise analysis. What kind of record keeping do you need to keep so that when you go to a banker, you actually have the right information in order to be able to access capital? So business and financial management were the top pick across the board. Second to that was leadership and communication, which I think is a real eye-opener and speaks highly to what this incoming generation of agrarians have realized, which is, in order to run a really healthy, whole person workplace, which is supportive of people, particularly in a really demanding profession, you want to make sure that you have really good communication skills, good conflict resolution skills, that you are a good leader and are able to really help people thrive in your workplace. So that was number two, was being able to be a good employer, a good manager. And then the next one was actually the community support. The thing about the feeling like they were isolated from a community of peers, really wanted to have some sort of inbuilt regular opportunity to have conversations with people at a similar point in their career, to troubleshoot issues, to get input, to get suggestions, to maybe even develop partnerships with one another. So those were the three: business and financial management, leadership and communication, and then the community and cohort support. Those were the top three. The other two that people were really interested in was coaching. One of the things that we're going to offer in the program is sort of a suite of mentor coaches, people who are available to have conversations and provide input to the fellows on specific topics. So someone who will actually look at your business plan and give you feedback, or help you figure out an enterprise analysis, or write up a really good grazing lease situation, or talk with you about human resources issues. So we're also looking for sort of surveying past mentors and other people in the Quivira community who would be really good people to serve in that mentor coach role. So there'll be some one-on-one coaching from people who are further along in their career to support the fellows in specific areas that they want that kind of support in. And then lastly, I think one of the things we always hear from people who are as you said, not so new agrarians, is the struggle to access land and capital is pretty significant and can feel like an overwhelming barrier. And while that is a key need, one of the things that felt that the alumni recognized and that we certainly recognize is that somebody may come to you with the opportunity for some land or the opportunity for a low interest loan, but if you don't have a good business plan, if you don't have a good budget, if you can't demonstrate your viability as a business person, you're probably not going to get that access. So those business and financial skills are really key in order to access land and capital.
Yeah, let's talk about what kind of people might be interested in this program and what will the program look like for them for the next year.
Well, for this initial year, this pilot year, our intention is to open it initially just to alumni of the new Agrarian program. So we'll see if we are able to fill the cohort with alumni, then it won't be open to the general new agrarian population until the following year. So at this point, I think the focus is on people who have several years of production experience behind them. They're feeling pretty solid in their production skills. The fellowship is not about production skills at all. It's really focusing more on the business and leadership side. So it's people who have been working in production for a number of years. They do need to either be in a job, a production job on a ranch, or in the process of getting a job on a ranch or creating their own entrepreneurial business. So this isn't a matching program. The new Agrarian apprenticeship program is a program that actually matches apprentices to mentor sites. The fellows program will not do that. The fellows actually have already secured their position or are working towards that position, and ideally working towards a managerial or entrepreneurial position. So I think one of the things to really note is if somebody is feeling like their career trajectory is to manage someone else's operation, this program is a good fit for you. You don't necessarily have to be someone who wants to create your own business. But if that is what you're excited about, the Fellows program is also useful for you if that's your goal.
That sounds great. So let's walk through a little bit of the calendar of events. This fellowship is 1 year long and it starts in this November. Yeah, walk us through a little bit about what the program might look like through the winter, into next spring, into next summer. What might somebody expect?
So we're going to actually start the program with a kickoff event where all of the fellows are able to meet in person together for 2 days. And that will be at Piscinas Ranch in Piscinas, California. And that's November 21st to 24th. And that's an event where the lodging and the food and the instruction is all covered by the program. People do have to travel to get there. There is a travel stipend if people need that. But so the event kicks off with that sort of late November in-person event. One of the things we heard loud and clear from alumni was having the opportunity to be together in person at least once or twice in the year was really important to them. So we're really excited that Piscinas is able to host this event. And then in December, we'll start having webinars once a month through those winter months. And the way we've designed the curriculum is that the topics that are sort of the meatiest, the heaviest, that will probably have a webinar, and then there might be some activities or exercises that people do, and then follow up. Those are going to be happening in the winter months before the production season really kicks off. So we're trying to be sensitive to the fact that once we get into spring and summer, people have much more limited time to be doing anything other than just working on their operations. So starting in December, there'll be webinars once a month. Those will be focusing on, like I said, some of those sort of heavier topics: business planning, business structures, financial management, leadership and communication, and some stuff about understanding livestock markets and selling animals when they're alive rather than direct marketing. So those are the topics that we'll be covering in the winter. And the thought there is that we're still working this out with the instructors who will be offering those modules. But the idea is that with some of them, say like with a business plan or an enterprise analysis, there'd be an introductory webinar. There would be some information. People would be given the opportunity then to use that information and build out a business plan or an enterprise analysis that's pertinent to their particular career goals, either currently or in the near future. And then there would be some sort of a feedback kind of session, whether that's with the instructor or with their peers in the group. So it isn't, the webinars aren't one-offs where you're just sort of passively listening to a lot of information and then not having the opportunity to actually utilize it. So we're trying to build in that utilization piece all the way through the season. So those are the topics from December into, say, March. And then in the spring, we'll still be having that monthly webinar, or it might go to every other month. And we move into some of the modules, which we're calling electives. So those initial modules around business planning and financial management and leadership and communication, those are required. All of the fellows will be involved in those. But then in the spring, we move into more elective modules because depending on people's career goals or their current employment situation, they have different needs. So those electives will be things like team management and how to actually organize your sort of daily and weekly and seasonal calendar with employees, accessing capital, direct marketing, understanding and accessing USDA and other grant and funding opportunities, and also land access strategies. So that will be the opportunity for people to pick out of those modules which ones are most pertinent for them. And those will be the only ones that they need to attend. And then the mentor coaching, the one-on-one coaching that I mentioned earlier, that will also sort of start in December. Towards the end of November, we will be able to survey fellows about what they think they most need from mentor coaches. We'll also have gotten the information from the mentor coaches about which topics they're interested and excited to coach on. And then we'll help people sort of match up in order to get that coaching relationship off to a start.
Sorry, Julie, I just wanted to jump in really quick because I think that's a really unique aspect of this program. I think there's a lot of mentorship programs out there where you're just paired up with an experienced farmer or rancher and you just ask them questions specifically. But that is a little limiting because they've got just their experience to go on. So if you have a question about, direct marketing and your mentor happens to not do direct marketing, you're kind of left sort of empty-handed there. And so this is cool. I really like how you guys structure this because it's more like a panel of people that we have at our, that you can choose, okay, I'm going to schedule an hour with this person. I'm going to schedule a lot of hours with this person. And I'm going to schedule maybe a little bit with this person. Just sort of, you can pick and choose based on what you need, which I think is really unique.
Right. It's kind of like a menu of elders or a menu of mentors, or one person that we spoke to who's interested in being a mentor coach said and this is dating those of us who know what a Rolodex is, but he said it's like a Rolodex of experts. So I think that is the idea, that there will be this sort of array of people who all have really different skill sets. And they determine, how much availability they have at what time of the year, but all of that information will be then provided to fellows so that the mentors they want to interact with and the fellows can schedule how frequently they're going to talk, what kinds of topics they want to be covering. I think sometimes when I think about it, it sounds like it may be a little chaotic, but I also think, like you said, I think that there's a sort of responding to the need of the moment piece here. Sometimes we don't know what we need until we're 3 months in, and then we go, oh, this is what I need to talk to somebody about. So hopefully the flexibility of this is going to let fellows access the expertise they most need in the course of the year.
I think personality wise too, you're just like a little more likely to really bond with certain people over other people. And so, some of this is really technical information, but other ones I can really see, having a conversation with one of these mentor coaches and being like, hey, seems like we're really getting along and kind of building a relationship that moves beyond this program. That sort of, they might be somebody that you can call later on in the future and maybe even provide help to them in the future and sort of build this reciprocal relationship into the future. Because I don't know, if we just randomly paired you with one person based on the kind of ranch you want to work for, just the likelihood of you really connecting with that person on a deeper level is a little bit slim. So this is nice too, because you can kind of look through the Rolodex, see who might fit, get some meetings with a couple different ones, and choose one that might, into the future help you.
And I think that that's one of the things we've heard from some of the people who have been talking to the new agrarian program for a number of years. Some of them are past mentors in the program who they're not in a situation anymore with their operation where they need or want a new agrarian apprenticeship to be, on their site, but they still really want to be involved with supporting the next generation. So there are a handful of people who I think are going to be really excited to not only provide the sort of immediate support that you're talking about, but also I think are interested in having that long time commitment. And as you said, I mean, we certainly continue to learn from the people who were apprentices on our operation. There are all sorts of things that have benefited George and I over time that we've learned from past apprentices because of what they've gone on and done in their life. So you're right. I'm glad you brought that up, that there's a reciprocity here, which I think is really core to everything that the new agrarian program really wants to do. It's really sort of intergenerational reciprocity is really at the core, I think, what we're trying to do. There's sort of two other components that happen in the course of the year-long fellowship. So the other one that will start happening in December and then will go on through the entire season is that once a month, the fellows will meet in a small group cohort. And that small group meeting is sort of an opportunity to address one of the key things that we learned in the survey, which was people really wanted to feel like they had a community of peers, of people who were going through the same thing, having the same questions, doubts, problems, issues arise. So after we have the kickoff event in November, we will organize the fellows into smaller cohort groups that might be based on geography, that might be based on type of operation. So we aren't entirely sure until we know who the fellows are, what's going to be the right way to break up those small groups. But those small groups will then meet once a month informally to discuss whatever it is they need to discuss. So if they're all working on business plans, maybe that's going to be what they would want to do during their monthly call. Or if they are trying to work on an equip contract, that would be a topic that they could be bringing to one another. So the NAP staff will help them initially with learning how to set up those calls, whether that's on Zoom or Google Meet or some other platform that they want to use, and give them a few sort of facilitation and meeting organizing tips. But then those small groups will be sort of self-managed. And that's a professional skill too. I think one of the things that often happens for people after they've been on an operation for a few years is that they still aren't really the person running the team meeting or trying to organize a conversation and help a group arrive at a decision. And those are really important leadership and manager skills. So we're hoping that these small group cohorts will be an opportunity for people to just get used to sort of how do you set an agenda? How do you help move a group through a meeting when you have, specific things you want to talk about, different kinds of personalities. So that's the small group cohort will be a once a month thing. And then lastly, we're hoping that fellows are able in these small group cohorts or perhaps more on a geographic sort of breakout, that they'll be able to visit someone's operation at least once in the course of the season. So the thought would be, say, if there are a handful of fellows in Wyoming and Montana, maybe there would be somebody's ranch or farm that would be centrally located, and the fellows in that region would be able to all meet there for a day or two in order to have more in-person time and to be able to just see one another's operations and talk about how things are going. So those are the big chunks of the program.
That's great. I feel like there's so much here that is just trying to foster. It seems, I don't know, sometimes it just seems easy to try to find other people to build your business with, but it's hard. It's, you feel kind of like you're burdening other people with your questions, or yeah, you just like don't have the right time to call them, or you don't know if they're busy. And so this is such a cool way. I mean, it's so simple in some ways, you just putting people together, but it's so powerful because it's like, all right, we know we're going to meet at this time. I have the expectation I'm going to show up and be ready to read someone else's business plan. It's just so cool. I love that idea because it can feel so lonely when you're trying to troubleshoot these problems on your own. And I think we all turn to the internet, and then people on the internet scare us even more about all these other things we should be worrying about with our business, setting up our business. So it's just nice to have real humans to be like, am I crazy? Like, is this really hard for anybody else? And just to have that group to sort of tear into things together. I just think that's so valuable.
I agree. And I think that's one of the things that we actually ask fellows in the application process is that how do they see themselves really supporting one another? That this isn't just how can the other fellows and the fellowship program support you, but how can you help to be building that connection in that community? How can you be helping others have that support system? So the program does ask people to think seriously about the commitment they're making. The expectation is that if you become a fellow, that you're going to show up. You're going to show up for one another. And so again, it's not like it's somebody's going to hit you over the head if you have a complication, but I think it really is sort of trying to acknowledge that when you're in production, you're always too busy. You're too busy to sleep. You're too busy to eat. You're too busy to see your friends. You're too busy to build out your social network. And yet we know we need those things. And so our hope is that by sort of creating that as an expectation, that it helps to start build the sort of scheduling muscle that we all need in order to do exactly what you said, in order to feel like we are connected, we can reach out. If we have a question or a problem and we send somebody an email or a text message or something, we don't feel like we're burdening them. We know that person is part of our support network and that at some point they're going to need help and I'm going to be there for them.
Yeah, I can just recall in my own entrepreneurial experience, just being like, 20 pages into the sales tax license booklet that the county puts out, and then being like, do I even need to read this? Like, why am I here? And I would have probably benefited from having somebody be like, girl, it, just sign up over here. It's super easy. It's like $10 a year and you probably don't even have to do it. So like you'll only have to do it for t-shirts. Like I needed
Yeah.
somebody so badly to tell me that I actually didn't need to be wasting this time. So it's just, I don't know. I can just see that being so valuable because you get in your head about, I mean, running a business is heavy stuff. I mean, you have to be an accountant at some point, and when you're first starting out, you have to have a little bit of prowess in all of these little things: accounting, business development, design, like business growth. It's just stuff that we didn't learn working on ranches when we were starting out.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And then like the communication and leadership piece too, as like if you're ranching in the West, more than likely you're working with the state land board or the BLM or the Forest Service. And so how do you find a way to communicate skillfully so that you can create sort of a win-win partnership sensibility rather than an adversarial
Yep.
sensibility? Or you're leasing ground from other people, and how do you actually make sure that you're being a good steward of somebody else's resources? I think that you're right, that I think both what makes this an exciting profession and an exhausting profession is the fact that you have to be able to do everything. And some of that you're going to be naturally really good at, and some of it you are not going to be good at. And it is going to be hard and it's going to take a long time. And, I certainly know 23 years in, there's stuff that I still don't do easily or well, even after all of these years. So I do think just acknowledging that we do need one another in this profession. And as much as there's this sort of mythos of the rugged individual, the truth is that we really do need one another. for support, for encouragement, for advice to, like,
Yep.
how do I deal with this particular, solar charger that just crapped out on me? And do you have one of these? And so I agree. I think we can be so easily overwhelmed by all of the parts of what it takes. And nobody goes into ranching because they're excited to maybe do a spreadsheet, or a lot of people don't. But we still have to be able to do that and do it well. So I really appreciate what you said, Taylor, because I think that we all need support at some point in all of this. And sometimes we don't even realize what we don't know.
Yeah, well, this program is so exciting to me. I am kind of seeing it come together this year for this first year. And I'm curious, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the program. So we mentioned already that we're going to do this first year with just New Agrarian Program alumni. And that includes this season's alumni and our Regen Ag fellows that we've been working with this season. But if you are not a New Agrarian Program alumni quite yet, just hang tight, because we will likely open this program to anybody next season. We're seeing how it goes, and we're just gonna keep it to a tight cohort this year.
If someone is really interested in trying to do it in this coming year, I believe that we are sort of creating a waiting list. So again, I think it's unlikely that we'll be taking people who are not New Agrarian alumni, but I think that if someone's really feels that they're ready for this program, they read the materials, they really feel like this is the point where they're at their career, they can send an email to New Agrarian at Quivira Coalition, and we can create a waiting list. And then when we close applications, if we can open them up to other people, we can let people know.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Please reach out if this does feel right. But just know that this year it might just be an exclusive thing for NAP alumni. And Julie, how many fellows are we hoping to have in this first year?
We're able to take up to 20. I don't think we necessarily need to take 20, but when we were talking to alumni and hearing how much enthusiasm and need there was for this, we wanted to try to create enough space to be able to take up to 20. So that would be the max we would take this first year.
And tell us a little bit about the cost of the program and why we decided to put a cost on this program.
It was actually really interesting. One of the things that we heard from alumni was that they all felt that if people paid something for this, they would be more likely to take it seriously, to really think clearly before they signed up, so that they didn't take a slot and then ended up not really staying committed to the program. So that actually came from alumni, them feeling that if they were going to be a fellow, they wanted to make sure that other fellows were taking this commitment to the program and to one another seriously, and that paying a little money usually means you're more likely to show up. And that does seem to be human nature. So it actually came directly from alumni. And we specifically asked alumni sort of what kind of a range did they feel was reasonable. And so the tuition for the year is $1,499. And we know that that might be a little steep for some people. There are other people who may be in a situation where that's an entirely reasonable cost, or their employer might actually see the benefit of them being in this program and would be willing to help cover the cost of the program for them. That is something that we heard from a number of sort of managers and owners that we talked to, as they said, if I have a really motivated person on my operation and they want to do this program, I would 100% support it, and I would be willing to pay their tuition for it. So depending on who you work for, you might actually be able to get this covered as part of your compensation. So it's $1,499. There are scholarships available. So we want to be really clear that if someone really wants to do this program and the cost is a barrier, there is a scholarship process, and we can indeed provide scholarships for people who are a good fit for this program. So please don't let the cost dissuade you from applying if you really want to apply. And then in addition, as far as cost goes, the travel is not covered. So fellows are required to come to the Piscinas Ranch kickoff in November. And the travel is not covered for that. Though, like I said, the lodging, the food, and the instructions are all covered. So again, if people have a financial hardship with being able to come to the kickoff event, there is a travel scholarship as well, and people can apply for that. And then the gathering that would be at someone else's ranch somewhere in the summer or fall, the sort of small cohort gathering, we also currently don't have any funding to be able to cover that. Though, once again, if that was a hardship for someone, they could reach out, and there are some travel scholarships available. So we really want people to know that the reason there's a cost is because alumni felt that that was a measure of people taking the program seriously and themselves seriously and making a commitment and investment in themselves. But if cost is a barrier, please don't hesitate to apply, because there are scholarship funds.
I think it's important too to think creatively about how you might cover this cost. You could maybe come to your employer and say, I'll cover half if you cover half. Maybe ask first if they would be interested in covering it. But if not, maybe ask if they could cover half. And that shows your commitment as well. And maybe just being creative about any partners that you've worked with, maybe folks that own land that you lease, maybe they would be interested. It's worth trying to ask respectfully, because stuff like this it's a real strong investment in your future. It's not like some vacation that you're taking, but it will actually improve. I'm very confident that this will improve people's experience as managers and leaders.
I think so too. One of the things that you've seen this, Taylor, and I've seen it, everyone on the NAP staff has seen that people reach out to our program looking for people to employ, because
Yes.
our apprentices and alumni tend to be pretty remarkable people, really dedicated, hardworking, thorough, conscientious, innovative, committed to regenerative practices. I mean, they're the kind of people a lot of people want to hire. And so this fellowship program really its intention is to help people really step into that next part of their career, into a job that maybe has more security, has more financial benefit to it. So, like you said, I think thinking of it as an investment rather than a cost is important. And that's really what we heard from a number of people, was that if someone was working for them, that they would want them to do this program. They see it as an investment that's going to help the operation.
Yes.
So they see a benefit back to themselves as well as to the young person who would be doing the program.
Awesome. And what is the timeline, Julie? When do the applications open? When do they close? And sort of what does that application process look like?
So applications are open now. I think that it launched on the Quivira Coalition New Agrarian page on the website last week. So the application is live. People can apply right now. Applications will stay open until September 29th. After people apply, we'll read over applications. The people who seem like they're probably a good fit will be asked to do a half-hour interview with someone from the NAP staff. Those interviews can happen anytime between when somebody applies and October 4th. We're hoping to be done with interviews by October 4th so that we can notify fellows that they've been accepted by October 11th.
Finally, tell us, what does the application process look like and where can folks find it?
So, like I said, it's on the New Agrarian program page of the Quivira Coalition website. And it is a fillable form, though it also has a link on it where you can actually type up your answers in a separate document and then cut and paste them into the application if that's an easier process for you. And in the application, it asks a couple of questions, and I would say that there are some of the questions will ask you to write at least several sentences in order to answer the question fully. So it will ask you what your professional goals are, whether that's moving into a managerial role, or are you already in a managerial role and feel like you want to be developing your skills, Are you interested in creating your own business, or are you already running your own business and realizing that you want to be improving your skill set for that? So it asks specifically what your goals are. It asks you what kind of business and leadership skills or access you already have and what you feel you most need. It also asks you how you want to contribute to your cohort as peer support. I mentioned that before, that one of the big points of this program is to create that peer network and to make the commitment to being a support for one another. So there is a question about that. And then it also asks you for 2 references of people who know enough about your experience and your agricultural intentions to be able to speak to why the fellowship program would be a good fit for you. So that it's not a really short application, but I think that it will really help people think concretely about why they want to do the program, if the program is a good fit for them. So we tried to make the questions things that actually help the applicant think through what they're most looking for. And so that if you are accepted into the program, the fact that you've already thought about what you're really looking for, what you most need, is going to help you sort of be ready for the program when it starts.
I think that's just a great practice in general. And yeah, I wanted to also I was reflecting on the qualifications to be in this program. We were saying we were not able to partner you up with an employer, but I do want to say that if you're working for an operation that you're like, this is not the one I want to be a manager at, that's okay. I would say, like, don't take, if you're curious about any of these qualifications, like, give us a call or email us about it, because there's so many different situations we know that all of our alumni are in. It's so tricky. It's like, oh, well, I plan on moving in January, but I'm working for an operation now, but I might be working for somebody later. I don't know. It's never clean cut like that. I just want to say that whatever situation you're in, if you feel like this is a good fit, go ahead and contact us. And chances are that we can make this work within what you're looking for, as long as you're committed to learning. So just wanted to clarify that as well.
Exactly. I think that, like, even if you're in a position where you really are basically doing ranch hand work, and perhaps there isn't necessarily an opportunity for advancement at that operation, but you still know that in the next year or so, you want to be able to apply for more of a foreman or assistant manager or manager position. I think that this is still a program for you to look into. Like you said, Taylor, like you may not be there yet, but if that's an aspiration you have, to be a manager or to be running your own business or to be starting an enterprise on the site that you work as sort of an add-on to whatever your employer is doing, I think all of those are potentially a good fit for this program.
Thank you so much, Julie, for outlining all of these details. One question I have before we go is, you've been involved in the entire crafting of this fellowship. You have personally been mentoring people for over 20 years. I mean, this is a really big deal. I mean, this is a really big shift for our program to be supporting not so new agrarians. What do you wish for this first class of fellows? Like, what do you wish they take away from this program?
That's such a good question. A couple of things. First off, I want to acknowledge that if you're choosing a life in agriculture, you're choosing an unconventional life. You're choosing a life that has a lot of unpredictability, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenges that people who aren't in agriculture don't really understand. And I think it's really important to recognize that it's a really brave and bold decision to decide to pursue an unconventional life. And that we need people to do that. We need people who have such a deep love and care for the land and growing food and for animals and for really being that next generation, that we really want to be supporting people. So I guess what I really want is for people to know that they're making this sort of brave, out of the box decision, but that a lot of people are here to support you. A lot of people care deeply about supporting you. and that they want to help you continue to stay connected to what you love about this work, what your big why is, and to be helping you build your belief in your capacity to engage in something that is sort of unpredictable and challenging and demanding and also deeply rewarding if it's right for you.
Julie, thank you so much for all your hard work in crafting this program. I'm so excited to see our first cohort. Like Julie mentioned, applications are closing on September 29th. So if you're thinking about applying, you should still have time by the time this podcast comes out. And feel free to reach out to either of us, anyone in the program, if you have any questions. But just want to say thank you so much, Julie, for being here, for sharing all this information, and for coming up with this amazing program.
Well, thank you, Taylor. I'm really excited about it. I can hardly wait to see what we've actually created and how it's going to go.
Yeah, and let's go party at Piscinas.
It's a beautiful place.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to connect to the broader Quivira community of ranchers, farmers, conservation and government agency professionals, educators, nature nerds, curious consumers, and more, we're excited to have you. Our website is quiviracoalition.org, and in the upper right, click on Get E-News to sign up for our newsletter, where we share happenings and events, learning opportunities, job postings, and more. Also, if you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us a review and a rating. It really will help other people find us and maybe even find their next step in regenerative agriculture. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
This podcast was produced by Quivira Coalition in our quest to support resilience on working lands. Learn more about our work and how you can support regenerative agriculture and solutions to climate change at quiviracoalition.org. This episode was edited and engineered by Caleb Wenzel-Fisher. A Folk Story, our theme music, was made by Alex Cristoforetti, and we're grateful for our guests who take time out of their busy lives to share their experiences with us.